once and it up twice. So now we're on track with that. Also, if you'd like me to email you a certificate, I promise you I'm saving the chat this time. So please feel free to put your email address into the chat and I'll go ahead and get those out today. Today's presentation is very timely for us as we're leaving our fall semester and we're getting ready to head into our spring semester. This is some planning tips and ideas to help us think about how we structure our classes and how we can better assist our students in ensuring that they are successful. So today's presenter is Bethany Winkler. She is the online manager at Central Texas College, and I will let her take it from here. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. I'm excited to talk about this topic with you today. So I'm just going to begin by sharing my screen to get that out of the way. There we go. There we go. And then I'm going to make you bigger so I can see you. Okay. So like Vicki said, my name is Bethany Winkler, and I am the online manager for English and Modern Languages at Central Texas College. I also teach in the communication department in communications studies. Additionally, I also homeschool my son, and from my experiences homeschooling him, that is what created my interest in this topic and kind of spurred me on to learn more about it. So I am going to first tell you a little bit about my story. So my son has ADHD, and he struggled in school, so much so that I started homeschooling him because I thought, hey, I teach college. I can figure out how to teach an 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old. Well, that was easier said than done, because we came across a lot of struggles with him being able to get information, retain information, pay attention, and through lots of therapy and learning, we found out that he has executive functioning skills issues. There's a lot of dysfunction there. And as I was learning about that with him, I thought, wow, this is really interesting because a lot of my students in my classroom exhibit some of these same struggles. And I always kind of attributed it to, well, they just aren't, managing their time very well, or they're not applying themselves well. But what I have learned is that there actually might be a struggle underneath the surface a little bit more that we can maybe think about in a new way. So that's how I came to learn more about executive functioning skills. It's not necessarily just a lack of motivation or interest. There are some struggles underneath. So Vicki, do you think we can do the poll? No, okay. So maybe in the chat, let me open my chat. My question to you is, what ways do your students struggle the most? Just in general, is there something that you can pinpoint that is a struggle for your students? And here are some ideas that I came up with. Hold on, let me grab my... notes here. So maybe they like to procrastinate and they put things off until the last minute. Maybe they like for a project, they complete some of the components of the project, but not all of them. Like they're missing steps. Maybe they just flat out don't study for maybe an exam that they have in class. Maybe they lack motivation, like they're all gung-ho at the beginning of the semester, and as the semester progresses, they become less and less motivated, and it's like they turn in less or they do less, make less effort as the semester goes on. Or maybe they underestimate how much they can juggle. So they have more than one class. Have you ever had a student say, I had to study for a test, so I couldn't turn this in on time? Like they could only do one or the other, but they couldn't do both. Or maybe they are having a hard time rolling with the punches that come with the semester. They've got lots of different things going on, and it's like they're juggling many balls. And as the semester goes on, all the balls start to fall. So let's see what y'all have said. Time management, work, life, school balance. Yes. Following through to submit assignments. Yes. Procrastination, pacing with the work so that they get the work done by the deadline, so they know how far back they need to start before they can finish on time. Comprehension, starting and completing assignments. Attention, feeling frustrated or overwhelmed and then giving up. Wow, yeah. Communication apprehension, yes. Yes to everything. Motivation. So we see all of these things happening in our classes, and I find it so interesting as we learn about executive functioning skills. We'll get a different perspective on what's going on with our students when they're having these struggles that we mentioned. So today what I want to do is define what executive functioning is. Then I'm going to talk about, there's basically 10 key executive functions, and then we're going to break down not all of them and talk a little bit about how they actually work in the classroom. We're going to highlight the role of what they look like in a college student. Yeah, oh yes, Courtney, you're ahead of me. We're going to talk about our own executive functioning skills as well, and I'll share some resources to understand our executive functioning, and then maybe this could also give some insight for your students. And then we're going to create a small plan of action for our classroom that might help to I don't know what the word is, adjust a little bit to think about these in a different way when we're presenting in our classes. Okay. So first, what are executive functioning skills? According to the book that was recommended to me when I started learning more about executive functioning for my son, called Smart But Scattered, they say, and I quote, it's a brain-based skills that are required for humans to execute or to perform tasks. Another way of looking at that is it's the mechanisms by which our brains manage and prioritize our thoughts, our memory, our working memory, holding things in our mind as we work with it, our emotions, and then our actions. And so you've probably used a number of these executive functioning skills this morning, even up until this meeting today, that you probably didn't even really think about. For example, making coffee. If you make coffee in the morning, you're using executive functioning skills to coordinate that task. You have to have the coffee, get the filter, put the correct amount of coffee into the filter, put the water into the little coffee pot. Vicky's laughing because I drink coffee. I'm not skilled at this, but and then turn it on and put the carafe underneath and wait until it's ready. You think that that's automatic, but there's a lot of organization, prioritization, a sustained attention that happens when we make coffee. That's an easy example, but what happens if it gets more complicated? Like we have a whole day worth of scheduling that we have to do. We have to get to appointments. We've got to get to class. We've got to plan what we're going to teach in class, or as a student, what we need to take to class that day. Have you ever had a student show up with nothing? It's like, okay, thanks for gracing us with your presence, but what was the plan for your participation in class? So there's a lot that goes into that. Even here, move it. Even getting to this Zoom meeting today, you had to know where the link was, click on the link, get there at the right time. All of those examples are a bunch of executive functionings that you're doing all at the same time. And we don't really think about it like that, but that is what is happening in our brains. Okay. And for many college students, when they first get to college, they are coming from a rather structured high school experience, and they are moving into a very less structured college experience. And have you seen that shift not go quite well for some students? Yeah. The independence is exciting, but very disorganizing for some. So there's a couple of tenets or truths about executive functioning that I want to point out. We all have strengths and we all have weaknesses. No matter how skilled we are, we have both strengths and weaknesses. And it's not like, oh, it's a weakness, we can't do anything about it. We can learn how to adapt. And that it doesn't make it easy, but it's something that we can build skill in when we know there's a weakness in our executive functioning. So I want to talk a little bit about the causes and the effects of dysfunction so that we can understand our students a little bit better when they're struggling with executive functioning. So first, some of the causes. ADHD for our students is probably one of the prime causes of a global kind of dysfunction. According to the Journal of Post-Secondary Education and Disability in 2022, between 2 and 8% of our students have ADHD. And ADHD, according to Smarts but Scattered, is one of the prime reasons why we have dysfunction in our executive functioning skills. Other things like autism spectrum disorder. According to the College Autism Network, autism is one of the fastest growing demographics in our college classroom. So more students with autism are successfully enrolling in college, and they're finding that their executive functioning skills are struggling when they have to balance so much in college. Also, 60% of college students meet some criteria of mental health problems or struggles, according to the American Psychological Association. So it could be a number of different things: depression, anxiety, OCD, and a whole host of other things that bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, all of these impact our executive functioning. Then there are things that maybe have come up because of accidents or health diagnoses like TBIs. I teach at Central Texas College, and we have a large group of veterans or active military, and they have, when they are deployed and they are in war zones, have high incidences of TBI, and that can drastically impact executive functioning skills. Other brain-based things like strokes or dementia or epilepsy or other brain-based things can impact executive functioning. And that can actually be, I have these skills, something has happened in my brain, and now I struggle with them. So it's not like I've always struggled with them, but some sort of brain-based injury can cause the struggle. Also, according to the National Institute of Health, stress and fatigue can reduce our executive functioning skills. And so this is more temporary, meaning that the more fatigued we are or the more stressed we are, the less likely we are to have executive functioning skills that maybe we have if we weren't stressed or fatigued. Have you noticed that for yourself? Maybe the end of the semester, like I usually can juggle these things, and now the balls are falling all over the place. So it can be temporary because of things like stress or fatigue. So what are the effects? Yesterday I forgot what day it was and was late for class. I'm guilty of that as well at times, yes. So what are the effects of dysfunction for ourselves or for our students? Number one is increased instances of anxiety, stress, and depression. So when we are not as successful as we want to be, or when we know that our innate skills are not up to the challenge of what classes and family and work is asking us to do, that causes stress, because a lot of students want to succeed. They want to do well, and their executive functioning skills, they know, are not up to the task, and that increases. And then when we aren't meeting the standard that we want or what other people want for us, we can experience feelings of depression as well. Educational and occupational struggles. Maybe these examples will hit home. Maybe someone, a student or you, will focus too much on one thing, become hyper focused, and will say, I'm just going to do this, to the detriment of everything else. Maybe during class, spacing out. There's so much on their mind that they're physically there, but they are not mentally there. And then they miss important information or instructions because of their like just overwhelm or spacing out. Maybe they have difficulty with motivation, like, I know I need to do this, but I'm so overwhelmed that I can't get started. And then maybe you've seen or witnessed in just general public emotional outbursts. Someone has had enough and it is meltdown in the classroom, at work, maybe in general public, because one of executive functioning skills is emotional inhibition, like making those emotions not fly out at inappropriate times. And then lastly, maybe someone has trouble explaining their thoughts or phrasing a question in a way that gets the answer that they need. And so these educational, occupational struggles, we can see are drastically impacted by executive functioning. And then we'll go into this more, but social struggles, relating to others, connecting with other people, making friends in college, joining organizations, that can also be a cause of dysfunction. Okay, are there any questions or comments so far? You could always unmute yourself if you want to say something. I don't know how others do this, but I am more than happy to talk about something. If you
I was going to say, it's bad when you space out and you're in the middle of a lecture.
Yeah, if you're the one that's spaced out, you're like, oh, and I'm back. I agree. So here are the 10 primary executive functioning skills. So depending on the source that you look at, the wording might be a little different. They might label it a little different, but they basically all mean the same thing. So what I am going to do is take 8 of these 10 skills that I think are most impactful and that I, in this amount of time, can talk about, and break them down, define them, talk about what it looks like if the skill is functioning well in the classroom, and then the skill is not functioning well in the classroom. Does that sound good? Okay. So the first one I want to talk about is task initiation. And Task initiation is the ability to get started on a task without undue procrastination. And then starting that task in a timely manner to be able to finish the task by the time it is due or the deadline. So a student who has strong task initiation might start a research paper 3 weeks before the paper is due so that he or she can research and outline and ask questions. Do you have students who start way in advance and ask lots of questions? So by the time the due date arrives, wow, they have a really good end product. Someone who struggles with task initiation might put off starting maybe until the night before the paper or project is due or studying for a test. And then, worst case scenario, turns in something subpar, hopefully not plagiarized, turns in something late, or if they're a really good student, they might just pull it off like an all-nighter and they turn it in and you're like, wow, when you hear the story about how they did that. Sometimes students struggle with task initiation because they feel overwhelmed. They don't know where to start, which comes in with another skill that we're about to talk about.
I was just going to ask, does this include grading papers too?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Like I know I have a lot of papers to grade and they're sitting there waiting for me. And sometimes I get overwhelmed because I know once I start, there's a lot to do. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So this is task initiation. My husband owns his own business and he has this big project he has to do. And he's like, once I get started, it's going to be so much. And so I don't want to start. That's task initiation. And for some of us, we know we can put it off a little bit, but we will still initiate in time to get it accomplished. And then some struggle with that.
Bethany, this is Yolanda. I have a question. So if students have task initiation, are you going to give us some ways that we can help students overcome that?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks.
Good question. Yes. Okay, so the next one is called planning and prioritizing. I'm moving you over so I can see the screen. Okay, so this is where a student has the ability to create a roadmap from the start to the finish and knows how to navigate that project, that paper, that assignment to get it accomplished. They have a plan and they know the steps involved in the plan. And they know maybe what's going to take longer or what's going to take less time and can prioritize based on the tasks. So a student who has strong planning and prioritizing will list the steps of an upcoming project, decide what's most important, what will take the longest, and then plan accordingly in order to do that project. A student who struggles with this skill might struggle knowing the steps. Like, okay, I've got this big project, I know the end result, but I don't know the steps involved to get to that end result. I cannot, in my mind, comprehend what those steps are going to look like. And then they might not prioritize the most important steps. So they might do really well on something that was small and easy, and then not do or do poorly on something that was a larger portion of the assignment. Have you ever noticed that? Yeah, that's a struggle that can happen. So planning and prioritizing, it's like someone can see the big picture, but not the small steps that equal the big picture. And that is someone who might struggle with planning and prioritizing. Have you ever been on a committee and you have a big project that your committee is working on, and there's some people who are really good at seeing what the end result is, and then some people will be really good at seeing the little small steps that are going to have to be taken to add up to that big like final product. Those small step people are strong in planning and prioritizing. Yes, you're right. Students might seem lazy or like they're not putting in the effort, even though they might not necessarily know the steps. If we can be explicit in that, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Next is sustained attention. And so this is the capacity to attend to a task despite boredom, fatigue, or distractions. So someone who has strong sustained attention will be able to focus on a task, even if there's things going on that are distracting to them. Maybe a friend wants to go out to eat, or maybe there's a good show on television or on Netflix and they really want to watch that show right now. And they become, they decide to continue on the task rather than become distracted. And sometimes I remember in school, there were some assignments that were just kind of boring. Like that wasn't my area of interest. And so I had to do it, but I didn't want to. And I needed that sustained attention to be able to complete that task. So a student with strong sustained attention can push through the tedious, the boring, the difficult, despite distractions. But someone else that struggles with sustained attention might start the project, oh, that's an interesting topic on that assignment. I'm going to Google it, and then off they go. And they're, chasing squirrels, as I like to say. And they don't necessarily come back around in a timely fashion in order to do something like an assignment, or they might become bored and then just forget about it. Next is organization. Gosh, this is a big one. For people who have to multitask and live life in society, organization is a big one. So this is the ability to create and maintain a system that helps them keep track of information, of materials, of their life. Our students are balancing a lot. They've got home, they've got work, they've got their studies. If they're part of like an organization on campus, they've got that to manage. And that's a lot to juggle. And someone with a strong organization, executive functioning, might use a planner to do this, or some sort of scheme that they have that works for them, that allows them to juggle all the things that they need to juggle and stay organized. Someone who struggles with organization might be surprised when due dates come. They're like, what? I know you've seen a student walk in on the day of a test, like, and then they realize there's a test, and I'm like, there's a test? Even though you've talked about it, their organization skills to like understand where it is and when it's coming and what they need to do might not be strong. They feel scattered and like things are out of control. And I don't know about you, but times that I've felt scattered and like things are out of control are not my favorite times. It can be stressful. It can be overwhelming. It can create worry. And so students who struggle with organization it might not be, oh, I just forgot. It could be, I'm panicked because I don't know how to organize well and stay organized. And they might not have had to use strategies in the past because someone helped them organize, but now they get to college and they don't have that support system in place any longer, and they struggle. Okay, a couple more. Time management. I saw a couple people say that this was a recognized struggle for students, and it definitely is. And for adults as well who aren't in the classroom, or us as professors when things get hectic. So this is the capacity to estimate how much time someone has just in general, how much to allocate to each thing we have, and then to stay within those limits and to meet the deadlines that we need. Someone who has strong time management skills can manage more than one task at the same time. Okay, I've got homework, I've got a test, I've got a paper. I need this much time for each of those. So I need to back up and figure out when I'm going to start these things in order to manage my time to get the result I want. Someone who struggles with time management might underestimate how long it's going to take to do something. And you might hear the student say, I couldn't finish my homework because I had a paper due in my English class, and I couldn't do both of them because I couldn't manage my time. My son, who has executive functioning skills issues, time management is one, and like his phone was updating, and he was not happy that his phone was updating. He's like, it's going to take like 4 hours. He was furious. It was going to take like 4 hours, and 5 minutes later it was done. But like the inability to estimate how long something will take is an executive dysfunction for time management. Goal-directed persistence. And this is the ability to set a goal, to work toward the goal, and to accomplish the goal without loss of interest or distractions or setbacks that make them abandon the goal. So someone who is able to have strong goal-directed persistence can set a goal like, I want to finish these 15 credits this year or this semester, and I want to get all A's in those classes. And they're going to work toward that goal. Whether they accomplish it exactly, they're setting their mind to it and they're working toward it. Someone who struggles with goal-directed persistence might start working toward the goal, but then become discouraged if that goal is hard or they're not meeting it the way they thought they were going to meet that goal, and then they stray or abandon the goal. Two more. We're almost done with this. Next is flexible thinking. And I'll just fess up to you, this is one of my weaknesses in executive functioning. And this is the ability to revise plans in the face of setbacks or new information. This is just adapting to conditions. I'll tell you, my organization, executive functioning, is really strong. And because that's strong, I see it and it's going to be like this. And my flexible thinking isn't as strong because of that. So someone who can think flexibly can adjust if an assignment gets changed, if the due date gets modified or something like that, or maybe they're able to bounce back after a poor grade. They're like, okay, that was rough, but I'm going to work toward it, and I can do this. I'm going to be flexible here, and I'm going to work harder. But someone who has not as great flexible thinking skills might get stuck in the way they're thinking it has to be done like this. There's no other way to do it. I can't make adjustments. Have you ever seen this happen in your class? I had 2 students get in a screaming, almost come to blows fight in a classroom because of a seat, a desk. 2 students were trying to sit in the same seat, and one of them was completely inflexible. Like, this is where I sit. I can't sit anywhere else in this class. This is it. And she was not happy that someone else was sitting in her seat. And she's like, this is the way my world has to work in order to be okay with this class today. And that could be multiple reasons, but it could be flexible thinking issues as well. Last one is metacognition. This also is considered self-monitoring. And this is like where we can step back and take a bird's eye view of ourselves and say, how am I doing? How is this going? So, for example, a student who gives a speech in my class, after the speech is over, can step back and think, was I successful at communicating my message to my audience? Did they get it? Did they like what I said? What could I do differently? And so they're reflecting, this reflective thinking is a skill of executive functioning. A student who has struggles with this might not be able to take that bird's eye view or reflectively think about their performance. And what often comes out is blaming others. I would have done better if this would have happened, or that professor had it out for me. That's why I had a bad grade on that assignment or that test or whatever it might be. Does that make sense? And so it can be because they don't have a strong skill at taking that step back and looking at reflectively their performance or their connection in the process. Sandra said, avoiding feedback is so hard to change. Yes, it is. And partly because it's a functioning skill that some have and some struggle with. You're right. So how did these skills play out in college? So I'm going to take a bigger look at this, and then we'll take a more narrow look at this. So in general, this balance that some of you talked about as struggles that you see in the classroom with your students is playing out here. So the balance of life, working with their academics and their work and their social life and their family life becomes a struggle for students who have executive functioning struggles or dysfunction. Another one is making social connections. And at your institutions, those who work on like student retention know how important it is for students to connect at college, right? They need to join organizations. They need to fit in. They need to find their niche or their place. And sometimes it is a struggle because of executive functioning. And positively, connections impact their quality of life and their ability to cope during stress. But that lack of connection can create disconnect, lower grades, greater feelings of stress, and even withdrawal from the institution, from the class, from conversations, that type of thing. And then health and wellness in a broader sense. Turn that page. So when we constructively manage stress, and can think through what's happening in our lives, we're more likely to manage our emotions and our behaviors, which can be impulses, and make positive decisions. And that's the same thing for our students. So what happens when a student becomes overwhelmed and stressed and impulsive? They're making probably not some great decisions about what they should do. As I was researching, they were talking about addictions. They were talking about overeating or undereating to try to manage the stuff that was going on in their lives that was stressful. And so our functioning in general and our executive functioning definitely impact our feelings of health and wellness. Okay. So, and I've seen comments, one of the ways that we can make adjustments in our classrooms is to understand our own executive functioning. So I could see you making connections in the chat and thinking about it as we were talking about these skills, but we have strengths and we have weaknesses. So based on the things we've talked about, if you feel comfortable, can you throw in the chat a strength you think you have in executive functioning and a weakness that you think you have in executive functioning? And I'll kind of list them again, maybe if you need to remember. Task initiation, getting started. Planning and prioritizing. Sustained attention, like keeping on. Organization. Time management. Goal-directed persistence. Flexible thinking. Vicky and I have that in common with as a weakness for myself. Metacognition, or that self-monitoring, that bird's eye view. I'm going to open the chat a little bit bigger. As I see you talking about strengths and weaknesses, I think it's so interesting how we're all so unique. And that's one of, I think, a positive thing about working in groups when we think about this is that we have, we can draw on each other's executive functioning strengths as we work together. I think that that's a cool perspective to take when we're working on committees or we're asking students to work in groups together. In our teaching, we often play to our strengths. So think about what you just said was your strength, and how you might play to that strength as an instructor. The inverse is also true. We might avoid or poorly use our executive functioning weaknesses or weakness in the classroom. That makes me think a little bit more. So, okay, so flexible thinking isn't my strength, and I am strong in organization. So I set out a course calendar for my students, and they've got these due dates, but then life happens. Like on campus, maybe there's a snow day, or maybe I get sick and miss a class, or something happens, and now I have to change my course calendar. And I don't want to. And I struggle with it because I'm like, but this organization works so well. It was just my plan, and I'm going to mess it up. That inflexible thinking. Now, of course, I then grumble to myself and make those changes, but maybe I could roll with the punches a little better. And maybe I could think of a way that my schedule could work better in a different way and be a little more flexible in that thinking. So we teach to our strengths, and we can often poorly use our weaknesses in class, just as thoughts as we move forward. Let me see. Okay. So as we are thinking about that, I want to give you a couple of resources. And I am going to put them in the chat. Wait. I want to put them in the chat. But I want to attach it from my desktop. How do I do that, Vicky? Help me!
To the
I did it, but it's
I'm not the right person to be asking this stuff, Bethany. I don't know why you're trying this. I'm inflexible in my thinking. I don't know.
it's supposed
Do you have links? You'd always just throw them onto a Google Drive and put the link in here.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how I do it on Google in the chat. So I just put it in Google Drive or Google Docs or whatever and say, here's a link.
Okay.
Just make sure you remember to share.
Yes.
Instead of sharing to anyone with link.
Okay.
And if you want, you can just give it to me afterwards, and I'll make sure I
Okay.
the packet
Okay.
I send out to
I'm going to have to do that because
okay.
It's not working the way I practiced. It just isn't working the same way. Okay. Let me go back to my slides. Oh, I bet you can't see that. Hold on. Let me go back to my slides. Share. There we go.
It's fun when an inflexible thinker talks to themselves through this process.
Okay, so here we go. So getting my organization back. So we need to know our strengths. And so I'm going to share with you a PDF that tests, it's like a quiz that looks at your own executive functioning. So it is like a thorough, in-depth quiz, and it asks you questions, and it will rank your executive functioning skills, and it gives a breakdown of each of those skills. So that is a way that we can understand our own executive functioning, and it's a PDF. So hypothetically, you can also share this with your students if they are struggling with executive functioning. And there's permission to use this widely. And then we also want to consider some suggestions that we could use in our classroom to help students with executive functioning. And there's another PDF that I will give to you that it's kind of a little more like high school related, but what we can do is take those ideas and make them our own in the college classroom. But here are some specific ideas that you can use to help to support your students' executive functioning. So according to an article I read, when educators can support executive functioning skills, it benefits our students. But obviously, we don't have a ton of time to do all these other things in our class. So these are small things that we can do that naturally can help students. Number one is to break down larger tasks into smaller steps. So we can do this by setting small due dates, number two, for larger projects, like here, your outline is due here. This is due here. This is due here, so that they have deadlines for those who have a problem with task initiation until the very last minute. And they take bigger ideas and break them down. So for those who struggle with knowing the planning and prioritization, this can help them. A checklist can also be helpful. So if there's a big project and they need 4 things, a small checklist that they use to check off those 4 things can be helpful. I also always encourage my students to use some sort of planner. So in Blackboard, I can create a calendar and share that calendar with students. And in that calendar, I put like start this here, do here. So I actually talk to them about when they should start projects, and that can be helpful for those who have struggles with prioritizing or organization or even some task initiation. So I feel so strongly about this. This is a little shameless plug. I wrote a book about it. And this book it's not a book, it's a planner. And so what I've done is I've taken all the executive functioning skills that a student needs, goal-directed persistence, and created just a semester planner. So this is just for one semester. And in this planner, it has like, I'm going to look at my week ahead. So what we're doing is we're organizing 1 week at a time. And we are making a checklist of what needs to be done first, second, third. And then it has a daily list that says, okay, today, this is what I need to accomplish. And you know, you've seen these things where it's like from 6 to 7, here's what I have to do. From 7 to 8, here's what I have to do. And then it has, I don't have a copy of it on the plan. for you to see, but what I've done is every 16-week semester, I've done the week plan and the daily plan to help them with attention, organization, prioritization, all of those different things. And in the back, there's like project planning. So my son does what's called, you should Google it, Ready, Do, Done. That's the name of the strategy for projects. Ready, Do, Done. And you work backwards. So from the done, what does done look like? This is what done looks like. So if this is done, what do I have to do to get there? Does that make sense? So my do, and then how do I get ready to do what has to be done? Ready, do, done. It's fantastic. And I've, in this little planner, done ready, do, done for projects that students have. And there's multiple products. And you do not have to use this, but it's one tool that students can use for all of the executive functioning skills that they need to accomplish in a semester or in a week or in a day. Also, as we've talked, we've mentioned that stress, anxiety, overwhelm are often the overflows of a dysfunction. So in our classrooms, we can take a minute to create space to breathe. And this can be like when my students are really worried about a speech they're about to do, I will do something random. I'll tell a joke, or I'll, do something funny at my own expense, or I'll tell them about a time that I literally fell down during a presentation, and it was hilarious and everyone laughed and I still made it through it, even though I was sprawled out on the floor. Like, just some levity, some breathing. In my interpersonal classes, we watch a TED Talk about the Superman pose by Amy Cuddy. It's the hands on the hip, chest out, confident pose, and how that pose actually creates a hormonal change that builds confidence. So we'll all feel really weird and do the Superman pose, but anything that brings a little bit of relief to the stress that they might be feeling can be helpful to center students and kind of get them prepared for that class day, even if it's just lecture, just to get them to the point where they are able to be present and focused. Phew. Thanks for coming with me on the journey. What questions or comments or ideas do you have?
Dave?
Yeah, so there were 2 of those 10 executive functioning skills we didn't go over, and you moved the slide too fast when you see what they were. What were those other 2?
They were, I can go back and show you the slide. They were working memory, which I just did not have time to talk about because it is a huge area. And the other one is, which one did I do? The impulse control, which is both like behavioral impulse control and emotional impulse control.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah. What other comments, questions, insights?
Somebody in the chat said to Google Barbara Oakley about working.
Oh,
so
working memory, yeah.
So what's your best tip for us what's the one thing that we should do to overcome our weakness, whatever that is?
Learn about it. So often we have these weaknesses, but we don't really, like, they're this big idea, but we don't really know what it is. So identify it, read about it. There's lots of little worksheets that help with specific executive functioning struggles, and just Google it. The PDF that I will provide will give you the breakdown of those executive functioning again, and just know more about it, because I think knowledge will help us to understand why we are struggling, and then we can make a plan.
I didn't know I had a word for my inability to be flexible. I just thought I didn't realize it was actually like an
An
issue
executive
I need to
function.
fix.
Right. Me too. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was what was causing this. When I was in school, I was so inflexible about when I would like go to bed. Like I got the award for the newspaper that I worked on as the resident narcoleptic, because when it became 9 o'clock, it didn't matter what I was doing. I was leaving because I was going to bed. And so there's my inflexibility playing out again.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. This has been so fun and interesting. And I hope that you were able to take away some resources that maybe we can all use. And now we have more labels and dysfunctions to work on. So happy holidays, everybody. Let's get to work. I will make sure the recording is available for everybody, as well as the PDFs from Bethany. So I appreciate everybody's attending, and I'll get those certificates out today. It's been a great time hanging out with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let me stop recording.